guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kazzy, and in this video I'm going to be doing my May wrap up and share some books that I would like to get to in the month of June. May was a pretty decent month reading wise. It wasn't as good as April, but in May I was trying to find a bit more of a balance between reading, working out, and putting these videos out for you guys, and just, you know, having a bit of a life. So I only read 5 books and 1 comic book, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm slightly a bit disappointed that I only got 5 books, but I'm pretty damn happy with that, so let's get into them. The first book that I read in May was Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan. Irish surname. I'm Irish, that's why I pronounce it. This is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and it follows 3 heroes that didn't know that they were demigods, Jason, Piper, and Leo. And this book is different in that it actually brings in the Roman mythology, which is pretty much an offshoot of Greek, except the names are different and their personalities are different. So in this book you follow Jason, who doesn't know who he is, he doesn't remember anything, he just wakes up on a school bus on a school trip and he's like, who are you guys? And he slowly finds out that he is actually the son of Poseidon, or Neptune, but he is brought to Camp Half-Blood and he is slowly figuring out who he is, son of Neptune, and how he fits into everything, why his memories were taken, why can't he remember anything, and he has a quest to fulfill. And don't worry, all our favourite characters from the Percy Jackson series return. Some of them make great cameos. Annabeth is in it, but there's a reason why Percy isn't in it, and you have to read it to find out. Because you're thinking, okay, son of Poseidon, Neptune, and Percy's the son of Poseidon, but weren't they forbidden from having any other offspring? And what I loved about this book is that it merged Roman and Greek mythologies together. I am more of a Greek mythology nerd, but I'm interested in the Roman mythology because it just has offshoots into the Greek mythology canon. And I loved the way that Rick Riordan brought them both together in such a seamless way. You didn't think it was going to work, but it actually does. And I love this book, and I cannot wait to read the rest in the series. Next is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. I found this in Belfast and I just picked it up and I started reading it on the bus on the way home, and I initially really loved it. I really loved the writing style of it, but as I got on into it, I was largely confused by it. And I went into it knowing about the magical realism of it, but at the same time I was largely confused by that. And then it wasn't until I was actually reading a lot of reviews on Goodreads at the end, when I had just finished reading it, that somebody mentioned a fairy tale aspect to it, and then it was like, it just clicked with me. This was more of a fairy tale, and that made it a lot more interesting. At the end I got like a very Maleficent vibe from it, and I'm talking about the live action version of Maleficent, not the Disney animated version. And I will say at the end it's very heavy. I would say it's got trigger warnings at the end of it, and this is like a young adult book. And at times I really struggled with the writing style. At times I really struggled with the narrator as well, in that it's in the first person and she's telling all about what's happened to her grandmother and her mother, and I'm like, how the hell do you know all this stuff happens? Especially when she's talking about love and sex basically, and I'm like, how do you know that happened? I doubt they actually told you. And that's the thing that I get with first person narrators a lot. It's that they're sharing information that they weren't privy to. And so I really struggle with that aspect of it, and that's why I give it quite a low rating. I think I give it about 3.5 stars, purely because of the narrator. I know it's a bit of a shallow reason to give it such a low review, but my opinion. Don't get me wrong, it's a fabulous book. I love the storyline and I love the story that it was telling. I just didn't click with the narrator. When I'm telling a story to somebody, I don't go into that great a detail, and then I'm pretty sure they don't give that detail when they're telling the story again. It was just too much information for somebody like that to know when they weren't actually there. That was my only issue with it. Then I picked up Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in the Grisha trilogy, and oh my holy sweet mother of God, I loved this book. I absolutely loved it. At first I was like thinking, oh god, this is going to be so heavy. This is a book that I would really need to concentrate on, especially when, like, at the start you're just bombarded with all these words and phrases that you have no idea what any of it meant, and then boom, the dark Darkling appeared, and I was in love with him. I actually was. I'm not kidding. I was probably in love with the Darkling for most of the book until the end, and I was like, oh yeah, probably wasn't supposed to be. Just the world that Alina is in, I was just enamored with it. The palace, I loved it. Her training, I loved it. I got like so into it, and like for me personally, I saw links with Sanctuary. I wanted this to be kind of like a alternate reality for Sanctuary, and Alina reminded me so much of Ashley Magnus, and why her powers never manifested even though she was like the offspring of two abnormals. Why didn't she have any powers? This book was pretty much my Ashley book. I loved it, and that's probably like an overreaching thing, but that's the way my mind went with it. The characters themselves, I love them all. I love to hate some of them. I hated that I loved some of them so much, and oh my god, in this book, some of the sexual tension between some of the characters, you could have cut it with a knife. Oh my god, I was like fanning myself. I couldn't help it. I cannot wait to get into the next books of this trilogy, but that will have to wait because I've got pretty much all of these to read. Am I kidding? I'm going to buy them anyway. Then I picked up Everything by Nicola Yoon. I have to admit that book was never high on my priority list of books to read. Contemporaries just really aren't my thing. But I bought it in work for £4. Couldn't resist a bargain. And I thought it was just going to sit there on my shelves looking pretty, and then one day I would just think, hey, I'll read that. But then when all of the hype about the movie in America started, then I was like, oh, cool. Then I found out that one of my favorite people in the entire world was in the movie. He's a very small role in it, but he plays Mr. Waterman. His name is Robert Lawrenson. I'll just put his face right here so you can look at his handsome face. And he plays Mr. Waterman, who is Maddies' teacher. And Maddie is basically allergic to everything. She is housebound in basically a bubble where everything is sterile, everything is sterilized, and she has to have like a very specific diet. And Ollie moves in next door and makes her realize that there's more to life. And the way Nicola Yoon tells this book is very, very interesting. It's like in very short spurts, and you have IM conversations, diagrams, drawings, and doodles. It was just a very interesting way of presenting this book. It was very different to what anything I've ever read, and so that made me basically read it in about 24 hours. And at the same time, I thought it was very cute, but I also thought it was very twee. But at the same time, I didn't think it was very unique. I have pretty much seen the storyline probably a dozen times in probably about TV and other books and other forms of media. And even the end, I pretty much called it from about a third of the way into the book, maybe even earlier. I just thought it was just like the typical ending. I pretty much just reached it because Robert Lawrenson's in it, and I enjoyed it, and it was very cute, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it, but for me it was just a quick read. Then after that I picked up Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh. This is in the book jacket because I lent my book out to my friend. With this book, I went into it thinking, like a lot of people, that it was a Mulan retelling. It wasn't. First off, it's set in Japan. That's not where Mulan is set. If the only reason that it's a Mulan retelling is because she disguised herself as a man, then pretty much everything with that trope needs to be remarketed as a Mulan retelling. But within this book, there were definitely quite a few scenes that I could just see from the Mulan movie. Especially the part where she like cuts her hair with the sword. Saw that. When Mariko, the protagonist in this book, is being trained, I could literally see, let's get down to business. But of course, the character that is training her does not sing and does not have quite the charisma as Shang. And then in my head, when I was fan casting Mariko, of course, I pretty much went to Mariko Yashida from The Wolverine, because why not, you know? And I suppose you could say that there were some characters in there that were kind of Wolverine-esque, minus the claws and the accelerated healing, but they pretty much had the gruffness of them. I enjoyed the book. I really loved Renee Ahdieh's writing style, especially that she used Japanese words and phrases within the book. As I was reading it, I didn't feel like it hindered or stopped the pacing at any point, because you could figure out what the words meant as you were reading it in the context that you were reading it. But then I found out that there was a handy dandy little glossary in the back of the book. I'm not going to tell you how long it took me to figure out that that was there. Only I'm just telling you that it is there for when you pick it up. I loved a lot of the book. I loved the characters. I loved the scenes that were taking place in it. I loved Robin Hood aspect of it. You're like thinking these guys are like a bunch of bandits, but you actually realize that it's kind of like a Robin Hood kind of setup. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I love the characters, even though we didn't get to know a lot about a lot of the characters. You just got a little bit of backstory and then a little bit of them in the present and them giving a little bit of information. But it just made you ask more questions, and that makes me excited to find out what happens in the next book, because there is a cliffhanger at the end. It wasn't a very surprising cliffhanger at the end. As soon as I found out he was in that chapter, I was like, yep, I know what's gonna happen. And it did. I really couldn't put the book down, honestly. I really couldn't. And of course then I just recommended it to my friend. And then the comic book that I read in May was Scarlet Witch. I'm not sure how you really describe what these are, but this is a first in a 4-part series for Scarlet Witch. I got this for my birthday from my best friend because she knows I love Scarlet Witch. And this is where Wanda is having nightmares and she doesn't know what it's about. The compound is attacked. She ends up leaving the compound to try and find out why these nightmares are happening. But it ends up being a trap, and so dun dun dun. It's very good, very quick read, and you know, it counted as a book towards my reading challenge, so yay. So then I've got a couple of books that I would like to get to in June. I probably won't get to all of them because there's 2, 4, 5, and 1 comic book because my best friend lent me it as well. So I'm already halfway through this one, but it's A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. As I said, I'm about halfway through it already. I want to punch Feyre in the face. I honestly do. Oh my god, her obstinance is just annoying. It's getting beyond grating. But I really love Tamlin. I love Lucian, and I really love this world that Sarah J. Maas has created. I like her writing style. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, can't wait to finish it. And then probably get Court of Mist and Fury, then a Court of Wings and Ruin, whenever I get to it. But as I said, a lot of books to get to first. Then of course more Rick Riordan. I want to get to Son of Neptune and Mark of Athena in June. Because what is a month without more Rick Riordan? And because I love the Lost Heroes so much, I really want to get moving on to this series. So these are the 2 that I would like to get to this month. And also because of Court of Thorns and Roses, I really want to get into more retellings. And so I got Hunted by Megan Spooner and Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This one keeps looking at me from my bookshelf because it just sits like this, and because the spine is so gorgeous, I'm like, I need to pick you up. I want to pick you up. And with Hunted, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, pretty much like A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm getting a lot of Beauty and the Beast vibes from that one. And this one is a different aspect of it too, a different spin on it too. This one is a Beauty Deadlier Than the Beast, and I read the inside jacket of it and I just think it looks really interesting. This one is impossible to find in Belfast. I had to actually get this one off of eBay, and not complaining, and it looks so pretty. Shiny, shiny, shiny. I'm a bit of a magpie, I'm sorry. Then from the comic book that I borrowed from my friend is Captain America and Black Widow Team Up. Captain America encounters a alternate universe version of the Black Widow, and it just pretty much goes from there. I really don't know what's going to happen in this one. I don't really know what it's about, but my friend says it's amazing and she really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading it because I love Black Widow. Rude. Diana, get up. So there you have it, guys. Books that I read in May and books that I would like to read in June. Let me know what books you read in May and what you would like to read in June. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!